Hello, I'm here with the lovely Joe. It is so fantastic to have someone like you in my network, Joe, and I am really looking forward to sharing what you do with everyone that's going to hear this, but also some of our stakeholders that are, more importantly, in the workplace space that are really looking for different solutions out there to create more of a wellness focus. So I know I'm aligned and I know that it's going to be great to hear from you. Um, so getting started from this little interview, tell us about yourself.
I surely will. Thank you, Ali, and thank you for having me. So my name is Jo Stevens. My business is the Zen Zone, and we provide mindfulness programs to support your mental well-being. But we do this through a breathing movement tool that is actually to give you the resilience and to help support you in your mental well-being and keep you mentally strong every day.
Which one of the reasons why I have really invited different guests to come together for this initiative is with wellness and building that into culture is it's not a simple, okay, we have this program in and I've ticked the box. It's
Absolutely.
wellness is this ongoing planning, and one thing's gonna work for one person and it may not work for the other person. So it's good to see that you're offering a point of difference, that's some practical tools to build resilience and keep people thriving at their best. So love it. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, no, you're welcome. And I agree with you there, though, Ali, because I think that, people need tools, like mindfulness tools. I truly believe that. I believe our mental well-being is just as important as our physical well-being. And
Mm.
you got to find what works for you. Not, my breathing movement tool might work for you, but it might not work for somebody else. So it's really all about finding what works for you.
And being proactive about it, no doubt, in the time that um, we don't need it,
Yes.
right? So that we're a bit more resilient when we do need it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so true because we can get as we all know, life is busy. I always get asked this all the time, the Zen Zone, you
Mm.
must be Zen 24/7. And the truth, the truth is I'm not. And,
Mm.
I'm like everybody else. I sometimes get slack at doing my own tools that I have. But
Mm.
that's the thing though, it's when they're there. I know that they're there when I need them. When those times when I can feel myself slipping back into old habits, I get back into my routine, going back to what I need to do to keep myself mentally strong. And it's really important that people learn the tools, find the tools that work for them, and that way it's they go back to it when they're feeling just like they're not themselves
Mm.
before we escalate, let's say.
For sure. And no doubt these are tools that leaders and managers could pass on to team, not to necessarily enforce it for everyday practice, but to be able to model it, to demonstrate, hey, here's a different solution that you may want to try. Or I find that we need to be able to provide various touch points for someone before they may actually be curious to explore it. So awesome.
Absolutely. And that is true. As I said, I know it's not going to be for everyone, but I find my goal is to have it in the workplace and to try and remove that mental stigma in a lot of ways and make
Mm.
it a little bit fun as well. Each move actually has its own name.
Mhm.
One of them is called the dragon. It's a metaphor
Mhm.
for that inner dragon, that
Mm.
stress, that overwhelm, and we just can't think.
Mm.
So the way I see it is if you're in the workplace and you're seeing someone who's really a bit stressed, and it's just like, instead of maybe you just go, have you gone and done the dragon movement today? Just that, so that way it's that conversation that's coming up without it being in your face, and just that little reminder. And it might even make people smile and just go, oh yeah, I probably do need that today. And so that's my goal, is to just bring that into the workplace and create it as a nice conversation that comes up for people.
And is that your ideal? So you would run the programs in the workplace like a workshop, or is it that you initially host like a full day or half day training and then you impart some of these skills and hand it over to people? Or what does it actually look like for you?
It's actually an online program. So it's an online program that, there's a couple of programs that I have. So the first one is for the leaders in the workplace. So like your wellness officers, your HR, even your mental health first aid officers as well. And it's giving them the skills and the tools to support their colleagues, teaching them each of the moves of when to initiate, times to initiate, and also how they can demonstrate them as well. And a nice way to bring the team together. I have a movement as well, like there's 5 moves all together. And there's a way of bringing all 5 together. So it can be like a Wellness Wednesday or something like that you can initiate. But I've also cut it down to actually individual programs as well. So each one has its own little program on its own. So that, because I understand, like in the workplace, it's also very busy. Especially like, say, like your mental health first aid officer, that is their a second role that they have compared to like their everyday job that they do. It's their role to support others in the workplace. They don't have the time to initiate this, but they can then say to somebody, okay, go online, do just the dragon movement, or there's another movement that you might be able to do. So I've cut them down into smaller programs so that people can go in there and initiate their own training as well.
What I love from that, so it sounds like it's like an e-learning base. So it's like, hey, no excuses, you can do that in your own time.
Absolutely.
But I also love that, one of the things that I've picked up specifically post-pandemic is the amount of increase of anxiety, and people are becoming more and more at risk of burnout. And what you've described is some really helpful tools for like emotional regulation. So actually knowing that there's a go-to step that can coach someone through their breathing or grounding exercise, right? So that they're more in their body. There's so much evidence to prove how beneficial that is to de-escalate that risk or potential to make things worse. So
absolutely.
It's incredibly, I don't know how else to say it, but it's an invaluable resource to be able to provide people.
Absolutely. It's teaching people how to self-regulate their own emotions as well. Like, as I said, I actually have like, when I was talking about the dragon movement, as I said, it's when they're feeling like they just can't concentrate, like they're really struggling at work, that, say they've got a big job they have to do, but they just can't think. So it just gives them the tools just to like take that moment, take that breath in, clear the thoughts. Each move has its own individual way of, like there's one where if you're feeling tight in your shoulders, so able to just release that tension that you might be holding. One to stand strong, when you're about to, like, say, you're about to go into a very important meeting, you can stand there in your power, as you say, ground yourself. They're all about that self-awareness and helping us to self-manage our own stress. Even like we all have different types of stress levels. There might be something that's really escalating, but it's also just something that when we're nervous. So it's really helping us in those different stages that we might be needing that self-awareness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, look, hats down. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I've certainly been in like workplace situations where it's more incident response, and it's that whole. I know the workplaces. Some depends on the size of them and the resources, but some may have an EAP service that they'd refer to, and I feel like EAP is still very crisis heavy, and sometimes, the mental health system will just say, go talk therapy, go and talk to a crisis line, etc. But, sometimes it is as simple as having a guide to ground yourself, and that may be all that you need.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing, like, as well, if someone is in a crisis and that, I know personally, when someone would tell me to breathe, I would start to hyperventilate because I'm really concentrating on my breath. So what I've found, and what the feedback that I've got from some of my movements, especially like I was saying, the dragon, it's like really opening up the airways. You're then breaking that thought pattern when someone is really in a mental health crisis, because they're concentrating all of a sudden on, what am I going to do with my arms? They're following the person along. So their thought pattern is just for that moment, just altered, just enough that they can be able to talk and, to be more in the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
then get them the help that they need. That's
Yeah.
so important. As I agree, I think those programs there, they are needed. We do need more of those programs in the workplace,
Mm.
and the support for when you're having a mental health crisis, or struggling with your mental well-being. But if we can just give them those opportunities just to calm themselves down just that little bit, just
Mm.
enough so that they are able then to go and get the support that they need. Or it might even just be enough that they can sit for a moment and bring themselves back to
Mm.
I'm okay, I'm good, I'm okay, thank you for that moment.
Yeah, for sure. I know I sent through some of the statistics ahead of time, but there was a statistic that was showing a workplace study that had over 70% of the people that needed the help in a workplace setting didn't ask for it, and only 3% of people had reached out to that EAP service. So, putting in some of this emotional regulation activities can really mitigate some of those psychological hazards. So that's what's really exciting for you right now is workplace laws are changing, mental well-being is coming into place and focus. So there will be lots of curiosity for business leaders to help support different solutions. And from what I hear, there's now also tax deductions. So it's a very good enticement for workplaces, because sometimes how do you advocate for prevention
Mm.
funding, right? Because it's like you need to spend some money so that you can actually prevent some of the high-end costs that mental health in the workplace can hit you with. Even just paying for EAP services is quite expensive, and that's
Mm-hmm.
only covering crisis end. But putting a little bit of that towards prevention can help uh, mitigate the risk of them needing to go to the EAP service. And of course, now it's a tax deduction, so it's a good thing. um,
Absolutely. But I mean, but more isn't, I think, you get also, some of the statistics are that most people have time off work because of mental health.
yes,
It is
yes,
the
yes.
leading cause, and I think that we need to, address that, change the culture, which would be lovely, as we all would love that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Break the stigma on mental health, and and that's, I think that's such a need if we can create that in the
Yeah,
workplace. Starting from the top to the bottom, that it's
yeah,
okay to say I'm not okay.
totally.
Um,
And it is so interesting that you've mentioned culture because it absolutely is so important. Um, our leaders and managers really have a mission to plant it from the top down. Programs like yours can slot into wellness plans very well. Um, but it's fascinating how often like we get workplace inquiries and it's a reaction. It's a I'm so stressed out and my team's stressed out and there could be signs of burnout. There could be signs of turnover and it's like fix it, in
yes.
that crisis state. And the fix it is focused on educate my individual team members to know what to do, and there is definitely some responsibility on us as individuals to
Mm,
be our best selves and bring that into the workplace. But if that culture is not wanting to do anything to mitigate that workload that's constantly overstressing people, or some of the hazards we're hearing at the moment is client aggression's picked up. Like you can
yes.
imagine, there's uncertainty in the world and people have been locked down and it's coming out through customer reactions. And if not dealt with properly, your staff are on the firing line. And it's technically okay if that happens, because an individual can be quite resilient in the first instance. But if you know that it's constantly repeating and happening, that's when we're starting to get to a point where this stress can lead to chronic stress, which can lead to very serious problems. So, what do we do to put different strategies in place so that our team are putting our best foot forward, not dealing with that, You know, the Energizer Bunny, it's just still on load
Absolutely.
and it's not going to
Just
help
trying to
us.
break that. Yeah. I mean, that's right. Just trying to
Mm,
break that cycle of, as you said, the burnout. And like, we're all going to have burnout. We're talking about mental
mm,
well-being, like it's up and down all the time. But that way, if you've got those tools that you can go back to when those times of stress, like if you've got a client,
mm,
that's really stressed you out completely, and it
mm,
is, you can go, right, if you have, this is what I would love, have a
mm,
workplace culture where I've just come off a really bad meeting. I really need to just go have some few minutes to myself. I'll be back,
mm,
maybe go and do some of my Zen movements,
mm,
and something to calm them down, or even just have a mindful cup of coffee and tea where they're just there
mm,
in that moment, sitting, maybe some nice, really relaxing music so they can reset their mind to go
mm,
back to
mm.
then doing their job properly. Because as
Absolutely.
we all know with burnout, if you're not you're not able to function properly, you're not
Mm,
able to actually do your work correctly. So if we can try and incorporate some of those tools into the workplace, changing
mm,
that mindset in the workplace, and then being more about caring for each other, and then that way we'll be more productive. We really can be more productive. It's not
mm.
going to take that time out from work. I think sometimes that can be like, oh, we don't have time for you to do that. Well, I think in the long term, you really need to have that
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, totally. I used to think that you can't put prevention in place in a crisis, but you can. You
Mm,
can't afford not to. But technically you want to have started before that crisis hits to put these strategies in place. It feels counterproductive, and I think it's because people want an instant fix, and that's
yes,
not the game we're in. These tools can help you be medium to long term resilient. Short term, sure, they can help support you, but you know they'll help you bounce back quicker if you implement it every day.
yes, 100%,
Mm,
absolutely. And just as I said, like it'd be great if like we had the tools, or something else in the workplace
mm,
culture where it is, like maybe a checklist, or
yeah,
have you had your mindful coffee today, or have your
gotcha.
mindful tea, those
Mm,
things in the workplace, would be great if we could have that mindset change for everybody. It'd be great. I
yeah,
think that we
for
would
sure.
find in the long run we'd be all more productive.
I know, right? And there was just one more thing I wanted to say that earlier you talked about some of your movements getting people into the body, and there is actually a psychology triad, sorry, about that, meaning that sometimes the physical body, a change of physiology can actually absolutely get you out of that state of distress. So bringing you back into your body or getting you away from those thoughts that could be triggering that emotional deregulation. So I can definitely see why that one works. Now, bringing it back to, I've just got a few questions, and I think
You're
that
right.
we've actually covered them probably a bit out of order, but let's just go back to see if you want to add to this. Why does this resilient building theme resonate for you, particularly with that workplace focus? Why do you think that's so important?
Well, as we were talking a little bit about, having proactive, will programs will actually build resilience and resistance in the
Mm,
workplace.
mm,
Your mindset programs, in the workplace, they've got to be an ongoing programs,
mhm,
helping people to learn how to self-manage, or, and so that understanding the signs of stress before they escalate. I think that's
mm,
so, if we could have those proactive programs, building that resistance, I think everybody would be more mindful of
mm.
noticing their colleagues when they can see when they're actually about to escalate as well.
Yeah.
I think not self-managing your own stress, but also noticing your colleagues as well.
hmm Us adults, like, we're the worst at it, I reckon, because it's like, yeah, there's definitely activities like mindfulness practice, mindfulness movements, yoga, meditation, all of this that will bring presence back into our body. But we sometimes are so out of whack that we're not noticing all of these early warning signs, and there could be deliberate trying to grow a business, for example, where you're
Yes,
pushing yourself to an extreme and you're pushing your team to an extreme, and we just keep going with this grit, and that's one blessing I think that COVID has brought in, is in some ways that grit is short term, and it's running out of power. People are really depleted. But the shift into this resilience building space is really starting to happen. So it's so exciting. And the next question was, well, what makes you unique? But I think that you already have kind of described it. You're offering this very unique perspective into, hey, I've got a solution here, some tools.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what I do. And, and I'm, wanting to provide that to people to support themselves and to support their colleagues. It's all also about that. It's not just about managing your own stress, but also supporting your colleagues that you work with.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a dream, isn't it? If only we were all more equipped to know what to do in a time of need, we wouldn't have to max out these health systems. We'd all be more resilient.
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's be honest. As you said before, the world, the workplace, it's a stressful place at the moment. We've got so many demands on us. We family life, leisure life, activities, things like that. Even social media, like the world today is so much different, like even from when I was young, that was a few years ago, but it's changed so much that we're just constantly, on this cycle all the time, and I think that's why we need to just go back to just having that breath, taking that moment so that we can just be present, in a lot of ways.
I mean, how silly is it? In some ways, we've just forgotten those basics. And I don't mean to put it down saying that's a silly thing, but we've forgotten, the value of taking our shoes off and frolicking in grass. We're just too busy for it, unless we make time for it. I'm not judging you what you do on the weekend. I love it.
No, I agree, and I think that's the thing. We enjoy those times, those down times. I think it's so important, and I mean, I love what I do. I love being out and about, working. I do a lot of other stuff besides just my workplace program. But but I have to manage my own stress as well, and that's when these tools come in handy. They support me,
for sure,
and that's where they came from, and that's what I want to try and give to and offer to others.
Fantastic. Now, last two questions is if there's just one tool, so part of this series is a knowledge share, because what I've found is there's actually a lot of people in my network that are in this wellness space, and we're all offering some solutions that could complement each other, that could be completely different from each other. And, painting a wellness culture, there's space for all sorts of alternatives and offers of delivering and collaboration and, resource wealth of sharing insights, etc. So I'm wondering, is there a tool or something that you would like to share with our network here, or just doesn't necessarily have to be a tool, but maybe just an insight or observation that you would like to share? Like, just imagine there's other advocates that are in this health and well-being space, and they could be potential collaborators with you. What's something that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, basically it is like down to as I said before, the mindfulness and the mindful movements. And I'd love to collaborate with, also like before I know you do school programs, I love for kids to actually start doing this program. I think that'd be great, helping them to build that resilience and understanding the quietness. But my tool, if I want to share you with a little tool today, it's like even in your seat, just make sure when you're sitting at your seat, you're just taking that moment and you're wanting to breathe instead of the normal breath in, just using your hands as you're breathing and just raising them up slowly, breathing in and then just breathing out, just slowing it right down. And if you feel like it, can close your eyes. But it's really just that simple move of raising your hands up towards your eyes, bring your hands up, and then bringing them down. Nice deep breath out. That move on its own can really just help you just to calm the mind just for that second. Slow yourself down. And we all need that, as we were just talking before. I think, slowing ourselves down being in the moment is just so
Mm,
important. And
mm.
yeah, just get rid of the monkey mind that we have so
Gotcha.
often.
I can definitely feel you're a tactile person,
Yes,
giving.
I am.
No,
Very
I mean,
much
that's
so.
good. Yeah, fantastic. And my last question is, so people in my network, we've got union bodies, we've got large corporations, we've got small business owners, a wide range of people. We do have mental health first aiders. So how can we help you? What's important to help get your word out there of what you do?
Yes, well, I'd love for you to connect with me and, become an advocate for my program. I have, as I said before, I am mental health first aiders. I believe that they're actually like an incredible asset to the workplace. It
Mm,
is the program that they learn is, a value in the workplace of recognizing and supporting somebody in crisis. But so many people that are going into that role, they do it because they want to support their colleagues. So my goal with my program is to give that tool to the mental health first aider that they can initiate that into the workplace and and support their colleagues with these simple but effective breathing movement tools.
mm,
Also the wellness officers, your HR as well. I feel middle management is really where, like, they're like the meat in the sandwich, let's
mm,
just
mm,
say.
mm,
They've got, their colleagues underneath, and then they've got their bosses up here. They're the meat in the sandwich. If we can empower them to support themselves and support their colleagues, I really truly feel that that can create a better working environment for
mm.
everybody. So
For
yeah.
sure. And just echoing, like I've done the mental health first aid course twice now. I've done a community one and a workplace specific focused one. And I find the course incredibly valuable. And it is interesting how often mind blank programs end up running alongside mental health first aid training. Because what we've found is the training does provide some mental health literacy,
Mm-hmm.
so the signs and symptoms as to what to look out for, and it does provide a bit of a framework to know, if you see this present, what's your next step. What we found the gap was that some of our services can help support is actually modeling that behavior, demonstrating the behavior, and building those skills. Because just because an accounting firm, for example, has one person that's a nominated, you go and do the first aid course, it doesn't mean they're any good at actually being in that moment of an intervention where emergency services are needed for contact, and it can be very emotionally taxing and overwhelming roles to fill. And it's not necessarily fair if there's just one go-to person in that workplace as well.
I agree, and
Um,
sometimes and unfortunately, some workplaces are doing it as a ticket for mental health,
yeah.
box as
Mm,
well. And I agree with you so much there. It is, it's great that we're getting that word out and trying to break that stigma regarding mental health. But when I did the program myself, I remember actually just saying, they talked about mindfulness, and I was like, well, why is there no mindfulness tools,
mm,
and like
mm.
I feel like we're empowering these people to be mental health advocates and to get the help, to support their colleagues. But let's empower them that little bit more, that they can try and do prevention instead
Yeah.
of, being a proactive program instead of being a reactive program.
And look, there's no one size fits all, I believe. Like there's multiple service offerings, and some can offer strengths in some areas and room for improvements in others. Yeah, I found the feedback from the course as well was that it's fair enough to say in a crisis call the emergency services, but the first aid courses don't necessarily tell you that it takes 3 to 5 hours sometimes, not all the time, for these emergency services to come. So what a
Yes.
great thing if you had a bit of mindfulness skills. If someone is in an anxiety crisis, for example, being able to default back on some of the tools that you yourself are well equipped with is incredibly handy. And the more that we practice that, the less that incident will impact, the loss of productivity and the absenteeism that can come from those
Absolutely.
incidents. So yeah, so it's good to hear. Um, I don't have any further questions. If you want to get in touch with Jo, we will be putting her contact information below. I want to thank you for your time, and I really appreciate everything that you do, Jo.
Oh, thank you so much, Alan.